I'm going to be talking about Stat 3 or Stat 113, which is Statistics in Society, and it's a liberal arts class. So it's statistics for liberal arts students, HTM students, some nursing students thrown in. So I want to tell you the story over time from where we started and where we are now. So I first got into Stat 113 winter 2012. My previous experience had been in Stat 301, and in Stat 301 I had classes of 40 at a time, so I could learn everybody's name. I mean, there were 1,000 students in the course, and I coordinated that, but I only saw 40 students at a time. I could learn their names, we could do hands-on activities. This is gummy bear catapults that we used to do to my ANOVA. We could do online writing and peer review using the calibrated peer review system. Our students were reading scientific journal articles and talking about the statistics that was used there. It was a fantastic class, and I loved having just 40 at a time. Okay, so then I got tossed into 113, which has a very different setup. It's about 500 students, but it was taught in 2 large lectures with about 200 to 300 students per section. The lectures happen on Tuesday, Thursday. The recitations with TAs happen on Mondays. And high DWF rates. We were in trouble. We were getting fussed at because our DWF rates were too high. So, okay, that's your percent of students who get a D or an F or who withdraw from your class. And if you're above 20%, you get in trouble. And we were above 20%. Okay, so when I first walked into this class with 200 people, this is what it felt like to me. And when I looked around my lecture, this is the kind of stuff that I saw. So it was really disheartening, discouraging. I wasn't having a good time. They weren't having a good time. I wanted the way I felt in my 40-student class. I wanted to bring that back. And I observed recitations, too. I mean, with just 20 people in a classroom, you would think you'd get some feedback there. Zombies everywhere you looked, and not the good kind of zombies either that we get here on Purdue for the zombies versus humans game. They're a lot more active than what I saw in that classroom. I'd have students, either they didn't recognize me, which is kind of scary because I would go 2/3 of the way through the semester, and I would sit next to them in recitation, and they would be watching a movie on their iPhone during recitation. Or they would sleep, or they would just stare blankly at the front and never pick up a pencil or never talk to anybody during recitation. And the TA would try and re-lecture a whole week's worth of material in 30 minutes before the quiz. So it wasn't working for anybody. Okay, and for my students, they felt lonely. I mean, they were surrounded by hundreds of other people, but it was a very lonely experience for them. They were scared. Most of them have math anxiety. Most of them have math anxiety, and they're liberal arts students taking a statistics class. That's not top of their list for something that they want to do with their time. And so it takes a lot to get them past that math anxiety to the point where they're even willing to try. They really weren't willing to give the class a chance at all. Statistics, forget it. They were going to sit there, they were going to try for their D, maybe, and that was going to be it. Okay, so spring 2012, that was my first semester in the large lecture. I had created an online version of the class the semester before, but this was my first time teaching the large lecture. And I was also in the second cohort of IMPACT that semester. And I had that whole semester to think of what's working, what's not working, what do I want to change, what are my goals, what do the students want from this class, what are the most important things that I want my students to get out of this class. Because when I was first tossed in, they just said, well, just teach the whole book. But there weren't any real learning objectives for that course other than, well, they should learn something about statistics, maybe some statistical literacy, but teach the whole book. That was all I got. So here's what we changed. So I was in the cohort for spring 2012. I did a lot of my redesign over the summer, and we introduced the changes in the fall of 2012. Okay, so what I was using to decide what was most important for my students to get out of this class, in the world of statistics education, there's the Bible of stat ed called the GAZE report, which stands for Guidelines for Assessment and Instruction in Statistics Education. Basically, any research article that you read on statistics education, there's a reference to GAZE in there somewhere if it's been written in the past 10 years. And so these are supposed to be the goals of every statistics class, an intro statistics class. We want to produce statistically literate students. We want to emphasize statistical literacy. We want to use real data, foster active learning, and use assessments to improve and evaluate student learning. And this goes along with what IMPACT wants us to do as well. Okay, so what do we mean by statistical literacy? It's being able to take information and explain it, judge it, evaluate it, and make decisions based on that information. Okay, and most of the students in statistics classes are not going to be statisticians, and they may not even go out and calculate the mean on a daily basis. But they're surrounded by other people using statistics all the time. They have to make decisions in their lives, whether it's for their job or just decisions about their health care or what they're going to buy. And they need to know whether the statistics that they're being given are worth anything. What questions should they ask to make those decisions? So these are the learning objectives that I came up with for my course. Coming up with these are the learning outcomes. The learning outcomes are really hard to come up with. How do you narrow your whole course down to just 3 or 4 big ideas? So I decided that I want them to distinguish between and qualify methods of data collection. So what type of experiment are you using? Was it collected in a good way? Interpret graphs and statistical analyses. So, tell me the 5-number summary. What is this histogram telling you? Those kinds of things. Express and calculate likelihood of events. This includes probability and confidence intervals, normal distribution calculations. And most importantly, be able to tell a story from your data and be able to understand somebody else's story from their data. I'm still teaching almost exactly the same topics I taught in the spring semester, but I reorganized them. I put them in a different order. The first third stayed about the same. I'm still doing the basics of data collection and how do you design an experiment, how do you take a sample, basic graphing, basic summary statistics. That's all in the beginning. And then the second third, I was really nervous about this, but I took all of the math intensive chapters, probability, normal distribution, confidence intervals, I put it on one test in the very middle of the semester instead of having it spread out over several. I thought it could be a disaster. It actually turned out really well. And then the last third, we're talking about regression, we're talking about two-way tables. And then I introduced a chance unit. What this is, it's examples from the media, it's examples from TV, it's examples from websites, it's examples from legislation, where we're tying together everything we've learned all semester and showing them that they're surrounded by uses of statistics and that they know what these words mean now and they know how to interpret it. And there's also an article discussion, article posting, article discussion, social media project that we do during this unit too, and I'll talk to you more about that in a little bit. But I like the timing of this because they're tired by the time we get here. They're worn out. All of their classes are piling on the information at this point. We're just a couple weeks ahead of finals. And to try and teach them something big and impressive and scary at this point is not going to go over well. They can handle it in the middle of the semester. They can't handle it at the very end. But for them to see some really fun examples from their own lives where they're using everything we've talked about all semester, we're putting the pieces together. We're not saying this is chapter 12 anymore. We're saying let's look at everything involved in these examples. So we look at Colbert Report, we look at commercials, we look at advertisements, we look at political claims. And it all makes sense to them at this point, and it's really fun. Oh, go ahead.
Is CHANCE an acronym for something?
I don't know what it's an acronym for, but in the 1990s, it was a big movement in the Stat Edward, and I'm not brave enough to do it the way the CHANCE people would go into a semester not having a syllabus, not having a plan for what they would teach when, but whatever news articles they found that week, they would teach whatever statistics went with that news article. I'm not brave enough to do that, but I could see teaching them all the stuff first and then finding fun examples from the news and tying it together. So I'm not doing it exactly the right way. Dartmouth was a big center for that in the 1990s. Nobody really does it that way anymore, though. Okay, so these are the things that I feel are important when you're teaching an introductory statistics class, especially to people who have a lot of anxiety about taking a statistics class. You got to ease that anxiety first before you can do anything else. You need to create a human connection because they don't see numbers as being connected to anything with human beings. They see that as totally separate. You've got to be high energy or they're all going to go to sleep. You've got to show that there's logic to it. It's not just numbers being pulled out of the blue. There's a logic to it. There's steps that you follow each time. There are procedures you can use. Try and work in the student's context and use words as much as possible. Don't just throw numbers at them. And I try and act as an ambassador to statistics. Statistics is really useful. It's really interesting. I can talk to people from all different fields about the interesting work they're doing and be able to help them by using statistics. I can understand what other people are telling me because I understand statistics. It's a language that you can speak to talk to all kinds of interesting people. And that's what I'm trying to get across. Okay, so I redid all my lectures and I incorporate lots of humor, lots of funny videos. You know, Parks and Recreation, the Betty White Saturday Night Live episode had a really good clip about the census. Bill Nye the Science Guy, I've got a normal distribution video from him. Monty Python's in there. Colbert Report, he has such great examples of statistics in there. And Hans Rosling, he does great statistics work as well.